Imagine a world of zombie apocalypse, and you're running from street to street, from room to room, to avoid being attacked by them. Why are you scared? Because you don't want to be turned into one of them, which would mean you would not be dead and you would not live a human life. But while we turn off our video games with the assurance that this is all unreal, a poet almost 100 years back saw it as the only reality around us, without escape, without redemption, where he saw us all turning into. When you attempt to study modern poetry, there is no way you can escape studying T.S. Eliot. He is one of the most prominent names of early 20th century British literature, and not just British literature, American literature as well. If you have already watched my videos on proofrock and preludes, you would know that he started writing at a point when this whole world was breathing up and waiting with bated breath for the apocalyptic world wars. While Proofrock was pre-World War I, the poem which we are going to take up today was published in 1925. That was 6 years after the First World War ended. So the lonely, desperate man in Proofrock turns into a collective loneliness and collective despair. Because after the First World War, identities were no more individualized. People were suffering as a collection. If you are planning to study the wasteland, then I strongly recommend going through the Hollow Men first, because that kind of initiates you into the way in which Eliot would develop his idea in his most famous poem, which is The Wasteland. And in this poem, The Hollow Men, you get to understand the kind of worldview, the kind of philosophy that Eliot was trying to establish, which was in a lot of ways connected to existentialism. So in this poem, he is going to look at existence and how human beings respond to the present scenario of despair. So while reading this poem, you'll have to remember that he was writing at a time when the world had gone completely mad, where countries were in clash with each other, and when European civilization was losing its stronghold over the whole world. Before beginning the poem, I want you to note this down, that this title, Hollow Men, it is again derived from two very famous writings. It is a combination of William Morris's The Hollow Land and Rudyard Kipling's The Broken Man. The poem begins with two lines which appear to be unconnected with the rest of the poem, but they are like the keynotes of this poem. So what are these two lines? This is called an epigraph, which means that it is something which is not a part of the main text, but is a starting point of it. Okay, so it's like an intro. Mr. Kurtz, he dead. A penny for the old guy. Now, apparently, it might feel as if Mr. Kurtz is the old guy who should be donated a penny because he's dead. But all of you who know about Kurtz know that these two references are not actually about the same person. Now let me take them one by one. Mr. Kurtz referred to the central, most important character in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Kurtz was an ivory trader who went to Congo and he gained a lot of fame because he was the best ivory trader. He collected more than any other person. And he had this kind of an idea that I'm going to change the lives of the natives there. But he went there and it was seen that he gradually tried to turn himself into a demigod, but a morally corrupted one. It is in this book that Marlowe, the narrator of this book, he says that Kurtz is kind of hollow to the core. and lacks human and moral nature. So, this poem is set on a situation where someone morally corrupt, hollow, like curds, dies. What happens after that? A penny for the old guy. Now, this can have two references or two sets of allusions. If you are aware of the gunpowder plot, you know about Guy Fawkes. Otherwise, just let me give you a very quick idea. Guy Fawkes was a person who was a staunch Catholic. And you all know that the parliament in the beginning, it was totally run by Puritans. So he wanted to attack the Puritans, Protestants, and he wanted to establish Catholicism in England. So he made a plot, a gunpowder plot, where he would place these gunpowders inside the parliament, and then when the parliament was in session it would all blow up. Somehow this plan was leaked and he was caught and of course punished. And since then, in November, English people started to observe the Guy Fawkes Day or gunpowder plot day, whatever you call. And during that time, children make up effigies. Effigies are these straw statues which then they burn. All right. So they go from door to door asking for 1 penny from each household with which they would make this effigy. They would buy their supplies. And while going from door to door, they would say a penny for the old guy. All right. That is, old guy is old Guy Fawkes. Now, another reference which is important in this context is, according to Greek mythology, when somebody died, they would go to the underworld. But before going into the underworld, they would have to cross the river Styx, where they would cross the river with the help of the ferryman, the boatman, whose name was Charon. And they would have to pay Charon a coin as fee of going beyond this world. From this perspective, this line means somebody is asking for a penny so that he can pay the old guy Charon and go into the next world. Which of these two references match with the theme of the poem is something that depends on how you interpret them. Alright? So let's get into the main text. The whole poem is divided into 5 parts and each part begins with one Roman numeral. So the first part begins like this. We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas. So the poet asserts that he is part of a community of people who are hollow. And then he says, we are the stuffed men. Stuffed means when you put a certain kind of object inside a cover, that is called stuffing. You have stuffed toys, you have stuffed pillows, right? So he is first saying that we, that is he and others like him, they are hollow men. Hollow means what is empty from inside. And then he is saying that he is stuffed from inside. So what is he? Empty or stuff? So here there is a kind of paradoxical statement we see, where he is saying that he is both empty from inside and filled with something from inside. Therefore, we understand that whatever he is filled with is basically amounting to this vacuum, basically amounting to nothing. That's why he is saying that I'm filled with nothing and I'm filled with stuff. Leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. There we get it. He is leaning against another stuffed person like him, and they are stuffed with, their heads are stuffed with straw. Immediately, the figure of Dorothy Strawman, right? That comes in front of our eyes. The scarecrow. What did the scarecrow lack? The scarecrow lacked intellect, intelligence, human ability to comprehend things, right? Because his head was filled with straw. Here also we have a similar kind of image as we saw in Wizard of Oz, that the figures are leaning together because they do not have any individual idea about themselves. They do not have any individualism as such, and they are supporting each other because otherwise they would fall off. Alas, alas is a sound of despair, a sound of dejection, where we understand that this speaker is in a lot of frustration. So he begins with a description of the hollow men, saying that they huddle together without showing any individuality, and they are in a situation where they are without any constructive thought. Who are he referring to? He is referring to the post World War generation, people who were back from the wars, who were having those post traumatic stress in their minds, where they saw their own friends blown up into pieces. We have seen what war poetry looks like, the kind of horror that they had experienced. He was talking about the insensitive generation of people who were unable to think the pathetic condition that they were running into because of bitter political interactions between countries. So he was talking about a set of people who were very real for him. This was his personal experience. And at the same time, he was talking about a setting which was far removed from this world and which was not the world of the dead, but it was somewhere in between, where you reach and wait before you get judged and placed in heaven or hell. Our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless. The voices have dried up, which means that they do not have any substance in them, any content in them. As wind in dry grass or rat's feet over broken glass. The kind of image that you will find in Eliot, they are not exactly descriptive of the exact emotion he's trying to convey, but they are kind of indicative of those emotions. Eliot was a strong believer in the idea of objective correlative. He felt that images should act as objects which correlate to a certain kind of emotion, like you should give in your poems a set of images which will immediately generate a certain response, a certain emotion in the readers, which will tally with the emotion of the speaker or the poet when he was writing it. So you don't see the exact emotion here, you see an image of rats scurrying over broken glass. Not a very pleasant thing. It's kind of difficult for the rats even. So somehow this whole image of uselessness, of meaninglessness, what's the point? Nothing fruitful would come out of this. When winds pass through dry grass, it doesn't generate any kind of happy emotion in us. Similarly, the words these hollow men speak to each other, they have no significance. They have no fruitfulness. So they're like rat's feet over broken glass in our dry cellar. Shape without form, shade without color, paralyzed force, gesture without motion. So many opposite things put together. One in a direct oxymoron, actually. Shape without form. Can you imagine a shape without form? So it's like something very vague, something impossible. Shade without color. Even if you imagine a dark shade, well, black is also a color, isn't it? So he is talking about impossibility here, that we have reached a point where our words are meaningless, as impossible to understand as shade without color, as shape without form, paralyzed force. Like you have a lot of force inside you, but you have suffered through paralysis. So you cannot make that force fruitful into action. Gesture without motion. So it's like we are acting as if in a mime, but even in mimes, when you are moving your hands and showing off gestures, you are moving yourselves. So gestures without motion is something again which is impossible and therefore meaningless. So the voices are compared to all these things. Those who have crossed with direct eyes to death's other kingdom, remember us. These people, the hollow men, they have not been able to cross the valley of death because they are stuck in some middle ground, in some nowhere land. But there are people who were heroic, who were at least courageous to meet death, to face death, to believe in what they believed in. Even Guy Fawkes. He died, he was declared a criminal, but he believed in himself. And even though that was a negative thing to do, he went that extra mile to prove what he believed in. So when he died, he went straight, through that valley. Mr. Coates, well, probably he was stuck with the hollow man because Marlowe understood that he was not a person who faced death with direct eyes. He actually said, horror, horror, when he was dying. So those people who had crossed over with direct eyes, the speaker is asking them to remember these hollow men. If at all, not as lost violent souls. These hollow men, they are not violent souls. They are incapable of any action. Violent, non-violent, nothing. Insignificance is the only thing they can achieve. They are not important. Therefore, they would be forgotten. The poet says that those of you who are remembered because you were heroic, because you were maybe tyrants but believed in yourselves, please remember us because we are insignificant. We are scared of being forgotten because we are the hollow men, the stuffed men. Now, this passage, this final part, it's an allusion to Dante's Paradiso. All throughout Eliot's poem, not just this one, other poems as well, you would find constant references to Dante, to Milton, to significantly important classical works, canonical works, because he believed that no poet, no author writes alone. When he's writing, an entire generation of writers are writing along with him. So there's a kind of parallelism drawn here with the idea of paradise painted by Dante in his book, especially Canto 3. And this is also connected to ancient Greek mythology, where it was believed that after death, people crossed a river to the Netherlands or to the underworld. In context of entering heaven, direct eyes also suggest clarity of vision and a kind of action and engagement. So he ends this first part talking about direct eyes, all right? And in the second part, he begins with eyes. Eyes I dare not meet in dreams, in death's dream kingdom, these do not appear. There, the eyes are sunlight on a broken column. Eyes I dare not meet in dreams. So, the eyes of people who have no fear when they enter the world of the dead. So, somehow the poet is scared of looking into the eyes of these people who have no qualms when they go to the other world. These direct eyed people. Even in his dreams, he doesn't want to meet them eye to eye. In death's dream kingdom, oftentimes in Shakespeare, we have seen Shakespeare comparing sleep to death. Here, death is compared to a sleep where you're going to have some dreams. And in that dream kingdom, you are going to encounter people who had been there before you. And if some of them have this direct eyesight, that is, the strength of conviction, the strength of identity, then you would feel less than human in their presence. So, the speaker, who is a hollow man, he is not interested to see them eye to eye, even in death's dream kingdom. There, the eyes are sunlight on a broken column. Sunlight is a very happy image, right? It's a symbol of life, light, warmth. Everything that is positive comes from the sun. But when it is mentioned here, it is not shining brightly, but it's shining on a broken column. So there is a sense of disruption of the goodness of sunlight. So the eyes are sunlight on a broken column. There is a tree swinging, and voices are in the wind singing, more distant and more solemn than a fading star. So you have an auditory image here, that is winds singing, and a visual image of a tree swinging. Now you might feel that this is a recreation of Eden, and some of you might have a feeling that this is describing a pre fallen paradise. So, if these hollow men are seeing such sights, then how can we say that they are suffering? But this is not where the hollow men are. This is about the death's dream kingdom. In death's dream kingdom, what happens? The eyes are sunlight on a broken column. There is a tree swinging. Voices are singing with the wind. They are not silent, right? So, death's dream kingdom is in a distant place, and hollow men are not yet there. Let me be no nearer in death's dream kingdom. Let me also wear such deliberate disguises. I would rather stay here, trying to cheat death maybe from taking me away from this place to its own kingdom. Why is the hollow man so scared? Because it's scared of judgment. Because they have been so insignificant, they have kind of wasted away their human potential that they have committed the greatest sin. Because if you are aware of the different kinds of sins described in the Bible, then there is a sin called sloth, or loitering away, or just wasting your human energy. That's what these hollow men have been doing. So they dare not enter the death's dream kingdom, and they want to wear deliberate disguises. And what kind of disguises? Rat's coat, crow skin. Look at the names of the animals. These are not conventionally considered to be glorified animals at all. They are scavengers, crossed staffs in a field, behaving as the wind behaves. Have you ever seen a scarecrow? They are put up in fields to scare birds away from crops, and they are basically straw structures who are given a shirt so that they look like human beings, as if they are standing in the field to protect the crops. And the birds think that they are humans and they just don't come near them. We all wear disguises. But he is talking about wearing the disguise of a scarecrow. Again, a very insubstantial object, behaving as the wind behaves without any individualism. However the wind comes, your hands will swing. So that is what we do, don't we? Whatever is trending, we follow that. Whatever is in thing, we subscribe to that. Whatever is viral, we promote that. So 100 years back, Eliot probably didn't know about these things that would happen to us, but we can certainly identify the exact meaning of this scarecrow image who is waving its hand without resistance to the wind. Similarly, we are leading our lives exactly in the same way, wearing the same kinds of disguises mentioned here in the poem. No nearer, not that final meeting in the Twilight Kingdom. Somehow, the hollow man, the speaker, he is scared of that final day of judgment. Not because he has killed somebody, not because he had been violent or anything, but because he had been absolutely nothing. So there is nothing to explain his existence to God during that final judgment day. So the Twilight Kingdom is kind of a sunset city, you can say, where all human beings must go to according to Christian belief when doomsday comes, when Qiyamah comes, and you would be judged for what you have done. But since you have done nothing but behaved only as scarecrows, the judgment would fall heavily on you. So the hollow men, they don't want to go into that dream kingdom of death. Section 3, it's all about a spiritual emptiness, lack of faith, and isolation of the hollow man. So let's see what it is. This is the dead land. This is cactus land. Here the stone images are raised. Here they receive the supplication of a dead man's hand under the twinkle of a fading star. This is the dead land. So he is saying that he doesn't want to go into the dream world of death. He is now at present in the dead land itself. So it's not that he is living in a world which is not dead. This is also a dead world. But he is refusing to go into the other kind of dead world, that is a higher world. And how does he describe this place? As a place full of cactus. Cactus, a thorny plant that grows in deserts, which doesn't give you any feeling of warmth, doesn't give you any shade, doesn't give you much nutrition. So cactus is something human beings naturally do not love. Well, many people do grow cacti at home, and they are really very beautiful plants. But if you are in a desert and you see nothing around you but cactus, well, I don't think at that moment you would really love them. And the stone images he's talking about, they can refer to so many things. The most obvious thing is the way in which human civilizations have constructed the idea of God. That there is a stone image and you kind of sacrifice something in supplication as offering of yourself to that Godhead. Okay? So, supplication of a dead man's hand under the twinkle of a fading star. Even in the Bible, you see, when Christ was born, a star was seen by the Magi and they followed that and they reached the place where Christ was born. So, Christ is symbolized by that star. But now, in this world where religion has lost its value, like Arnold said, the sea of faith had gone away. In this world, that star is fading. So, all this ritual or sets of rituals that human beings had made up to create the idea of God, that has become meaningless. So, here the stone images are raised. Here they receive the supplication of a dead man's hand. So, human beings are no more alive. So, their prayers are not also prayers from a living soul. Is it like this in death's other kingdom? So, he doesn't know what happens in that higher world of death. In this world, everything has become meaningless. Is it like this in death's other kingdom, waking alone at the hour when we are trembling with tenderness, lips that would kiss, form prayers to broken stone? So, human instinct to love, to enjoy company of each other, these things are denied in the world of dead. And he sees that this is also happening here. Because I have the intention to form a bond of friendship, a bond of love with another human being, lips that would kiss. But what I'm doing, I'm just forming prayers to broken stone. So this is a pretense that I am doing. Now this kind of may be linked to lines from Romeo and Juliet, where I'm quoting from there. Romeo says, "Have not saints lips and holy palmers too?" Juliet, "I, pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer." Back then, it was not a contradiction. There would be people who would pray and there would be people who would kiss. But here now there is this confusion, this collision of personalities. What you want to do, you don't do that. You end up doing something else because you are wearing disguises. 4. The eyes are not here. There are no eyes here. EYES. You all know the meaning. But when you pronounce this, doesn't it sound like the pronoun I? Read the lines once again. Just replace EYE with capital I. The eyes are not here. There are no eyes here. Which means there is no individual here. We are a collection. We do not know how to respond in an individual way. EYES, eyes. They again are not standing for themselves, they are standing for people. The eyes are not here means everybody who is here is blind. So, eyes refer to people with eyes, or in this case, people without eyes. The eyes are not here means there are people without eyes here. Therefore, this is a synecdoche where one body part is used to represent the whole body. In this valley of dying stars, in this hollow valley, see again the reference to star is continuing. It's a dying star, but it's not a dead star yet. So Christ has lost his relevance, but is not absent yet, but has not vanished yet. This broken jaw of our lost kingdoms, so much of empire gone. Think about the British Empire, think about the French Empire. They were all across the globe and now they are gone. So, whatever European civilization had achieved till the 20th century was destroyed in the wars they fought. And this broken jaw of our lost kingdoms, again a synecdoche here, you can say, where kingdoms are broken down. It's not just jaw, but why is he mentioning the word jaw? Because with jaw, we speak, we communicate. The kingdoms are not able to communicate. The civilizations are not able to communicate with each other. And this entire lack of communication is shown in this image, that the broken jaw of our civilization, of our countries, of our lost kingdom. So there is this dream kingdom of death, and there is this lost kingdom of the hollow man. In this lust of meeting places, we grope together. So they are not dead because they have not yet crossed over, but they are not living. So they are in some kind of a middle position and they are huddling together. They are confused, but they are not speaking to each other because they have lost the capacity to communicate. We grope together and avoid speech, gathered on this beach of this tumid river. Tumid means swollen, a river which is full. What river? The river they are supposed to cross, river Styx or river Acheron, whichever name you give it. They are standing at the beach of that river and they need to cross over, but they don't want to because they are scared of the judgment. Sightless, because eyes are not here. People with direct eyes, they already cross over. And these people, they are sightless, they are speechless. Unless the eyes reappear, there is hope. Maybe by some magic, the eyes might reappear. What kind of magic? As the perpetual star, multifoliate rose of death's twilight kingdom, the hope only of empty men. The eyes may reappear if that star reappears. And then he gives this idea of a multifoliate rose, a rose with many petals. Foliate means petals. Mary is often imagined to be figure of a rose. Okay? And this certainly matches with Dante's idea of saints. In Dante's Paradiso, the final vision of paradise, it's like a flower. And the petals, they are made of saints, angels, and other examples of goodness and virtue. So the petals are those people. So what is this about? This is about the kind of hope that these hollow men have. How will they be redeemed? How can they receive their sight back? Only if by some chance these saints, these holy stars appear in this place and save them. But nothing like that is happening anytime soon. So what these people do, they're huddling together and they are waiting kind of indefinitely. They don't want to cross over. So what do? They start playing kids' games, and suddenly we have a recreation of, rather a subversion of a recreation of a nursery rhyme. Subversion means when you change something in a negative way. So there is a very famous nursery rhyme which goes like this. Here we go round the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush. So that is the song. Eliot takes that song and reverses it. And what does he do? Here we go round the prickly pear, prickly pear, prickly pear. Here we go round the prickly pear at 5 o'clock in the morning. Prickly pear, a kind of cactus plant, you can say. So the children, or in this case the men, the hollow men, they are moving around not any mulberry bush, but around a prickly pear because it's a land of cacti. You don't have mulberry here. You don't have nice shady plants. Now, if you look into the history of this original nursery rhyme, that also is kind of tainted with negativity. In women's prison, it's a saying that women were asked to do this kind of exercise where they would go around a mulberry bush as a parade. So, this idea of this song also resonates with the idea of imprisonment, of meaningless following of order or trend. What people are doing, you do that. That's a parade, right? One person walking, you walk behind him in the same way. Okay, so all of these ideas, they are put into this here we go round the prickly pear rhyme, along with the idea that it's no more a mulberry bush, it has become a cactus. Why 5 a.m.? 5 a.m. is considered to be the time of Jesus Christ's resurrection. Resurrection is when he was dead, it was believed that he rose again. So this moment was at 5 a.m. So 5 a.m. is a time when you're supposed to have very high religious sentiments raging inside your hearts. But what are these hollow men doing? They are playing a nursery game. And then he comes to the real problem of the hollow man. Between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow. We often have a lot of ideas how to change the world, how to become better, how to impress somebody. But reality is far away from that idea. We want to do things in life, so we set ourselves in motion, but often we are unable to perform the act eventually. So between idea and reality, between motion means intention of movement, between motion and actual action, there is a gap, and the hollow men are not able to cover this gap. It's like a shadow falls, it's like a curtain falls. And in Julius Caesar, you actually have this line between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first motion, all the interim is like a phantasma or a hideous dream. So, this gap is the dream the hollow men are dreaming now. They are living that dream where they are without action, without success, without fruition. They might have ideas, but they are not transformed into reality. And then he gives a very interesting line, for thine is the kingdom. If you are acquainted with the Lord's Prayer of the Christians, you would know that the last two lines go like this: for thine is the kingdom, the power and glory now and forever, and then say Amen. So this is a line where human beings or Christians, they declare that it is God's kingdom and they should be given access to it through forgiveness. Between the conception and the creation, when a child is conceived, it's inside the womb. But when it is born, then it is created, right? When it gets real life. So between the conception and the creation, there is a time gap. Similarly, when you conceive of an idea and then you create that idea or give it shape, there is a gap which the hollow men are not able to cross. Doesn't this happen to you too? Things which we want to do to change the way we are, to bring about certain change in the way we look, in the way we think, in the way we are dealing with our problems. But how many of those ideas are getting shape? For the hollow man, none. Between the emotion and the response, something happens to you. You have a certain emotional reaction to it. But often we have to again wear those disguises and hide our emotions. We cannot respond because we are living in this meaningless world. So between the emotion and the response falls the shadow. So falls the shadow is like a refrain. Refrain is a line which is repeated in a poem. And here you have this line, falls the shadow, repeated. Okay, so this is a refrain. Life is very long. Is it part of the Lord's Prayer too? No. In Conrad's An Outcast of the Islands, so another reference to Conrad here, Sea Captain Tom lingered. He observes this line, life is very long. And he speaks with unconscious sadness. So, life is very long means when you are unable to act upon it, when you are unable to change anything about life, then life becomes something of a monotonous, long journey without end. Between the desire and the spasm, between the potency and the existence. Potency means the potential, the sum total of your ability. Like if you have potency, then you are potent, you are competent. Between that and the actual existence, between the essence and the descent, falls the shadow. Now, with existentialist philosophy, you have this dual idea of existence and essence. Existence means what you see in front of you, me as a human being. Essence is the quality inside me that makes you see me as a human being. Are they intrinsically connected? Can essence stay outside existence? What came first, essence or existence? All these things were philosophically analyzed and interrogated by people like Sartre, like Kierkegaard. So this happened with the existentialist philosophers. With Eliot, he simply uses this term essence to mean basic human quality. So there is basic human quality, but how far are you applying that? Is there a descent? There is a shadow. Nothing happens. Falls the shadow, almost like waiting for Godot. He is anticipating Beckett's drama here. For thine is the kingdom. And then, right when we are trying to say that, see, at least the hollow men are able to say the Lord's Prayer. You remember what happened to Macbeth? The Lord's Prayer was stuck in his mouth and he couldn't say Amen. At least these hollow men are trying to say this. But suddenly he gives us the Lord's Prayer's line in a broken way. That these hollow men are not even capable of, just like Macbeth, although Macbeth was at least doing something, these hollow men are not able to speak out even one line. And everything becomes disjointed. For thine is, life is, for thine is the incomplete, disjointed meaninglessness. So if the hollow men's existence becomes meaningless, then how can they hope to utter the Lord's Prayer even without confusion? This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Okay, now if we see this as the last part of the fifth stanza, and if we look at the first part of this fifth stanza where we have the mulberry bush image, this also alludes to another rhyme. This is the way we brush our teeth, brush our teeth, brush our teeth. This is the way we brush our teeth, the golden something something morning. I forgot. And that rhyme was about a routine that children would follow when they would get up from their beds and eventually reach school. Here, the same kind of meter is used and the same beginning. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Eliot had not seen the H bomb yet because it was 1925 and that bomb went 20 years later. When he was asked in something around 1958, I might be wrong about the year, but he was asked later in 1950s that would you write that line again? The last line, he said, probably not. Because he already had experienced that yes, the world could end with a bang. It wouldn't be the bang that God would have brought, not any doomsday, but something that human beings were quite capable of producing. In 1925, he was experiencing terror, yes, but he knew that we were not glorified to deserve any kind of grand doomsday burning from God. That would be very cinematically appealing to the eyes. Nothing. We didn't deserve that. We deserve to simply evaporate with a whimper. Compare this to the last lines of Preludes, the anticlimax of it all. He was beginning to create a sense of anticipation in us with the three lines, this is the way the world ends. And then finally he gives the anticlimactic, not with a bang, but with a whimper, the most quoted line in history of poetry. So what is this poem about? To speak in very blunt way, this poem is about a set of people, hollow men, with whom the poet identifies himself because he is using the pronoun we and interestingly the pronoun I later on. A bunch of people who have become insensitive, who have lost the capacity to think, and who do not lead a normal, energetic human life anymore. But they are afraid to die and actually cross over to the other side. So they are possibly dead, but are waiting at the side of this river, which they would cross, which they are not very eager to cross, for the fear that they might be judged. And the only way they might get some meaning back in their lives, some vision back in their lives, is only if they started to understand the message of the saints and the prophets. So, are these hollow men dead men? No. They are not dead. They are very much living, but they have forgotten that they have a life to lead. So, next time you turn on something like 7 Days to Die or Resident Evil, or begin to watch something like Train to Busan or Dawn of the Dead, just remember that perhaps we are watching none but ourselves there. So, who are these hollow men? These hollow men are not just some handful of people about whom Eliot is writing a poem. This is about an entire generation of people. And if those men were hollow in 1925, I wonder what Eliot would call us, who are only driven and motivated by consumerism, by whatever is selling and whatever is trending. The questions that you might be asked in the exams may include analyzing this poem as an imagist poem, where you have to talk about the auditory images, the visual images, even the tactile ones. Then you have to talk about the different kinds of worlds that are created through these images, the desert land, the dream world of the dead, and how these two worlds are set against each other. And through these images, for example, the image of the river Styx, through those images, how he is connecting ancient Greek mythology with Christian mythology or Christian idea of heaven and hell. You might be asked to talk about allusions because with Eliot's poems, you have so many cross references with other literary works. So you will have to list all of them down, whatever I have mentioned in this video. Maybe you come across some in your library books, reference books there. List them all down and try to make a cohesive answer. Connect them. Don't just randomly say this line refers to this line alludes to that. Why is that allusion made? You have to refer to that too. The third question is, of course, a straightforward, give a critical appreciation of the poem, where you will have a lot of scope, because you can talk about imagery here, about different kinds of figures of speech is using. The rhyme, of course, is a broken rhyme here. You do not have a regular rhyming pattern. Sometimes you have repetition of lines, of refrains, which are only to emphasize points. The fourth question might be, analyze this poem as a modern poem, or analyze Eliot as a modern poet in Hollow Men. There you have to focus on two things. One, the structural component of modern poem, and the intellectual component. That is, first you have to see why this is a modern poem so far as the content is concerned. It's about despair, it's about human condition in the post First World War Europe, and it's about the lack of agency, the lack of individualism. It's like Prufrock gone blind. He was already saying, do I dare disturb the universe? And now he is saying, I don't have the power to even disturb the universe. Forget about the universe, I can't even disturb my neighbor. Because me and my neighbors, they are equally blind, and we are huddled together, leaning against each other, and we are trying desperately to grow, but nothing is coming out of it. So that is the content of a modern poem. The despair, the loneliness, the isolation of man, the lack of individuality, and at the same time the lack of companionship. It's not like you're huddled together means you are having your best buddy with you. No, you don't have any companionship because you don't have eyes to recognize the person who is next to you. Because even that person is wearing some kind of disguise like you are. And this idea of disguises, this is also very important so far as modernism is concerned. Structurally, well, the fact that you don't have a regular rhyme scheme here, the things go on like, it's like a poetic counterpart of stream of consciousness technique which is used in prose. Okay, so here the flow of the poem is established by a flow of poetic consciousness and not by the flow of rhyme or anything. Even the meter is broken up, because if sunlight is broken down by a broken column, then how can you expect the poem to maintain a kind of consistency? This poem is about vacuity. This poem is about despair, meaninglessness. So it wouldn't actually desperately try to generate much meaning to you. And this will structurally give a kind of meaninglessness. And that's why the stanzas are of different size. The lines do not have any consistent meter or size. And he drops bombshells after bombshells of allusions and images at your face. And we get kind of overwhelmed by the possibility of multiple interpretations. This multiplicity of interpretation is something that I believe makes Eliot more postmodern than modern at times. The brutal honesty, the confession, the extreme personal despair reflected through completely non-personal imagery. That is what modern poetry is about, and that is what T.S. Eliot is about. I hope with this reading of The Hollow Men, you are in a more confident position and would be able to appreciate the various images which you would come across in the wasteland. Maybe we will do the wasteland soon enough, because many of you have requested it so many times. So if you think this lecture would help you, or if you want me to cover any other poem by Eliot as well, do write that down in the comment section. And I really hope you have subscribed to our channel because that would keep you connected with us. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. I'll catch you all in my next video soon. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye-bye.